Yeah, how you been?
I've been doing pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I I was looking over all the things that we wanted to talk about today because it's been like over a month. So we're like, oh wow, we had all these other ideas. So you had some pretty funny ones. Like
Yeah.
you mentioned Christian OnlyFans.
Yeah, that was one of them. That
That
was
was
one of
kind
the
of fun.
topics. Yeah. Oh,
But in
and then
general, let's start with how you doing. You doing
I'm
good?
good. Yeah. Um, I turned 40, feeling very 40.
Join the club, man. Me too.
Yeah, I'm doing good. I turned 40. I put out an EP, a jazz EP, um, which is 4 songs long, and it's
Wait,
up
remind me
on
what EP is. Is that the
ex
records? Is
extended play.
that a big record?
No,
Like,
it's a little one.
oh, okay.
Yeah, like so a single, obviously one song.
Yeah.
And then in the modern parlance, there's what's called the digital 45, which is 45 was a single, but it had a side A and a side B. So there's one song on the top and one song on the bottom of the record.
Uh-huh.
Um, so the digital 45 has 2 songs, and then there's an EP which has 4 or 5 songs, and then an LP which is like a full-length record, which is 10 songs and up, you know. So I
Yeah,
made an
very cool.
EP, but it's all instrumental jazz. I got tired of trying to sing, and also I'm working on some. I'm working on the idea of like building out a bunch of backing tracks so people can jam along with my stuff at home. So I make like the song with like um the instrumentals and all the solos and everything, and then there's like a backing track version which has just the rhythm section, like the drums, some chords, and bass, and then people can like jam along with
So it
that.
sounds like you need a group, man.
But I can do all the instruments, right?
Yeah.
Uh, but the idea is so people go on YouTube, right? They're like at home with their sax or their guitar or whatever, and they're like, oh, I just want to like jam along with some jazz, but they don't have a band, right? Because they're just like some dude in their house. So they throw on the backing track, play along. It's like they're playing with a live band. So that's the idea. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's cool. I bet you that would get a lot of traction on TikTok, but possibly
yeah,
YouTube as well. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I'm gonna make a YouTube video version of it and then a TikTok video version of it and put it on
Yeah.
both, um, so people can
Cool.
jam on. Yeah.
I just heard of this one lady that really liked this one band's music. It was like stuff from the 80s. She's a big
Mhm.
80s fan. So she just like took the background track of it and started singing it. And then the author of the music was like, "How does this person know my music?" And she's like, "Well, I just really like it." And then he said, "I have like 40 songs from the 80s that I never actually recorded because our vocalist like gave up after like the first recording. And would you mind being our vocalist?" And it's like fresh music that nobody's heard from the 80s. She loves 80s music, and now like this music is getting a second chance. I thought that was really cool. But
That is
that's
really cool. I love kind of stuff like that. That's awesome.
yeah, I'll try to send it your way.
Yeah, that's right. How have you been?
We're doing pretty good. We on Father's Day we went to a Unitarian Universalist church for the
Oh
first
yeah.
time. We went as a family. I was like, hey, it's a Father's Day present. Because well, it's kind of funny, but like, I've been going for about a year to our church where I just like wanted to give up, just like not interested in going to the same old sort of thing.
Mhm.
So I wanted to try something pretty different. Funny thing is, it was Father's Day, but nary a mention of men at all. In fact, they highlighted the feminine qualities of God in some scripture. But anyway, it was talking about how, I mean, they read a scripture and then they pointed out how just like in process theology, that God learns from his mistakes. God kind of learns, like the in the Old Testament, they shared a story of how, I think it was Elisha or something like that, promised that there would be no rain, and then he encountered a woman and her son that were on like their last meal, and then they were going to curl up and die or something like that. And he's like, "Yeah, give me a meal," and they're like, "We don't have anything." And he's like, "Oh, so hey, this is not a good idea." So after he got a meal from them, he promised that there wouldn't be a drought anymore, and after that, like it rained. And so she, the pastor, said something to the effect of, God learned through his prophet that just clamping down hard, that masculine sort of energy that's like, you will obey me or nothing good will happen. It was sort of changed. Um, and it highlighted the feminine aspect of the divine,
Hmm.
which I thought was really interesting on a Father's Day. Um, but besides that, I went back again last weekend by myself because kids had something to do, finishing up with VBS from our church.
Hmm.
And I enjoy it. I enjoy it. The biggest thing I enjoy is the feeling that one gets in churches these days, at least in evangelicalism these days, is the feeling of like this is what we believe, and you have to conform to this, or you're not a part of us, sort of a thing. Or it's like us versus them mentality, like all the way up and down. So what I enjoy about the Unitarian Universalist thing is they say, we believe that you and God are on a journey together and that you will find your way. That we know that you'll find your way, um
Hmm.
and we have faith in the process. And yeah, it was really refreshing because that's the kind of stuff that I need as I'm exploring my own beliefs, and encountering new ways of thinking and coming to faith and that which is. So yeah,
Nice. Yeah, I went to a Unity church, which is different than
it
Unitarian
is.
Universalist. Yeah, which
It
is weird.
is,
I
yeah.
didn't know that until I went to one. And it was very like, yeah, it was definitely a lot different. Sounds a lot different than that. Definitely a lot
Hmm.
different than that. That's interesting though. Hmm. Um, yeah, so we had like a full agenda of things to talk about. And
Yeah.
you had started it with the first thing you wrote on the agenda,
The first
right?
thing I wrote is my wife got an award for being Christ-like. So
Mm-hmm.
we went from a Shawnee Mission Medical Center, the name of the town, and then medical center, which is like the hospital in the area, to Advent Health Medical Center. And
Hmm.
their logo like even had a little cross right in the middle of it. And
Hmm.
I think their motto is like advancing the healing ministries of Christ. Um,
Hmm.
but it's a business too. So my wife kind of grumbles that like, yeah, but we're not really helping people. We're just charging them an arm and a leg to, get healed or whatever. And grumble, grumble, grumble. And I mean, it's okay, but it's not, something she would love to be doing. And then all of a sudden, her coworker just like wrote this a note to all her employees, like her boss lady. It's like, hey, we're going to honor this person. She's going to get this award for being Christ-like, and that's one of the awards that they hand out every year. Like one person for this hospital gets the Christ-like award, one gets it for best outstanding achievement or something like that. There's only like 4 awards, 4 people a year get special things, and the
Hmm.
Christ-like award was going to be for this coworker lady. And Amanda was like, oh, that's so cool, yeah, she totally deserves it, that's awesome. And she wrote, like, she said, this person is expounding for all of these examples, like perfect, wonderful, like Jesus kind of attitude sort of stuff. And Amanda was like, yes, 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 that is totally this coworker of mine. And so when they got to the meeting, they were reading off all these wonderful things, and they said, and this award goes to Amanda. And Amanda was like, yeah, this what? And so they tricked her. They said, we wanted you to and here she was like half writing this like amazing, like, you deserve it, you're so Christ-like, this is you totally in a nutshell. And like she was about to hand it to this other person and be like, yay, it's you. Because it was told to my wife that nobody know, like she doesn't know, but everybody else does. And
Mhm.
so she was all pumped to this meeting, and then it swaps, and it's like highlighted on my wife, and everyone's like, "Ha ha, we got you. It wasn't about her, it was about you." And she's like, "What?" Because if somebody said, like right away, like, "Come to this meeting, this is about you," she'd be like, "Oh no, no, I'm not. No, 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 thank." It's like, "Oh, thanks. I enjoy it, but I don't believe it." But she was like totally willing to believe all these positive things about this other person. But when it came to her, she's like, What? It's me?" And here she was willing to give all these high kudos and praise to this other person, but she finds it difficult to love herself. I mean, that's my label. I think she finds it difficult to praise the good aspects and love herself and stuff like that. But and it was perfect the way it was done because she had to accept it, and she had to accept the love that she was gonna give for somebody else and bring it back to herself. She wouldn't have done so otherwise, you know? And I'm just like, "That is so perfect." Like, God, like, thanks. Like, she really needed this, like, sense of ownership of her her goodness, and a lot of it had to do with, like, how she interacts with people and how she really cares and really tries, and not just like, "Oh, whatever, she's late, kick her out," but just, like, compassionately being like, "Okay, like, we'll see if we can call the doctors to see if you can get in even though you're technically late," and so she deserves it, but it's hard for her to believe and live into those things, and I was just really proud of her for that, so, and she was
That's
finally proud of herself too.
that's hilarious, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's fitting though that like that she was all ready to be like pumping other people up, like hurrah, hurrah. That's fitting.
Yeah, I know, it's so
Yeah, I
amazing.
love that. I love that. So,
Like, she had
yeah.
this card that didn't have the name on it because she hadn't got there yet. She's kind of a procrastinator. Like, "You are like Chri" or whatever. You
Yeah.
are amazing." And so she didn't get to writing the name down, and then, like, here it is in our house, like, it's like a card for herself. I'm like, "Yeah, babe, you deserve it."
In the Bible, it talks a lot about like, I mean, Jesus talks a lot about like he among you who would be the greatest must be the least, or like, but like they ask
Mm,
him for an example of the greatest among us, and he shows them a child, that sort of thing.
mhm.
Like, it's like on one hand, like I love all that stuff, it like jives me, like, being a servant and like and pumping other people up and like um helping others and doing all that stuff and like I'm all about it, and I think that it's very easily manipulated
Yeah, I
um
think I do know, yeah.
by people
Like,
who
by people who
don't have the
don't
best
have
intentions.
compunctions? Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Like
Like
I was thinking like what would I do if like the Mormons took over or like the
Uh-huh.
Muslims took over and they forced everybody to be Muslim or they
Mhm.
forced everybody to be Mormon or something like that.
Right,
Like what would I teach Evelyn, my daughter, in that situation?
right.
And I was thinking about how I would not tell her like don't do these things, don't be religious because like
Yeah, exactly.
survival. Like, I don't want to be branded a heretic or a witch or, have, lose my life over. And I don't like ascribe to any particular faith, you know. So I have no like hill that I would die on, so to speak. But what I would teach her is like, secretly all of this stuff is BS, right? Like you should pretend, you should fake it, you should learn how to play the game and learn how to play the politics in this situation, but it's not real. You know what I mean? Talk a big game, do what you need to do to survive, because you didn't choose this. Somebody else chose this for you. So use the system against itself. You know
Mm,
what I mean?
yeah.
Like, and I realize that sounds like very villainous, but like I don't know. I didn't ask for the Mormons or the Muslims or whoever to take over my country and force me to convert, right? Like I am sure that there was plenty of pagans back in the day that
Mhm.
had that exact same experience where like the
Mm.
Christians took over and they were like, yeah, it's great new religion, but secretly it's BS. But like, yes, yes, Jesus, woo, you know what I mean? Like, and they learned how to play the politics, they learned how to play the game, and it's just meet the new boss, same as the old boss. I'm sure that happened in like the early days of Christianity. I mean, Constantine, I mean, he was a Roman emperor,
Right.
who was a pagan, who made it. Did he make it the official religion? I think he legalized it at least, right? And then I think he made it the official religion later,
Yeah.
but he didn't make it being pagan illegal. That was somebody else. So
What's interesting is though, even the systems, the systems that are set up to enforce the systems do churn out real authentic faith, if that makes sense.
right, right,
So like even like if you went too long to tell your daughter like this is all BS, like she might condemn you a heretic or call in, because that's what exactly happened to like some of the people in like Russia and China or whatever, that they tried to live uh secretly, and then their kids just like turned on them because there was an incentive to turn on people, like you'll get $50 if you call your parents in for whatever.
well,
And then they did, and then they're like, oh crap, now I don't have parents. Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah. You'd have to like kind of,
it's a fine line to like balance that sort of a thing. But yeah, I've thought about that too. Like when I was a kid, learning about like the intent of the founding fathers, like this is a country that eschews one particular religion over the other. It's not like they didn't like Christianity. They're like, yeah, Jesus is cool, but they saw the history, and like I was taught at least about the 30 Years' War, when there was a time of the English kings when the one king was Catholic, and then his daughter was Protestant, and then the other one was Catholic. And so when like were competing for power, like when the Catholics took over, they killed all the Protestants, and then when the Protestants took over, they killed all the Catholics. And soon enough, there was like hardly anybody that had any real convictions at all. Like as if
right,
there was like you should be killing the people as a part of Christ's mission anyway, and
yeah.
just like this whole idea of like losing the main thing for the specifics, just is horrible. And here we are, some people trying to preach Christian nationalism, and it's like, well, which kind of Christianity are you talking about? Like
Yeah.
Calvinist or like predestinationism, or not? And both are in the Bible and all this other stuff. So like you want to like get down to the end and you're fighting over stuff that doesn't matter, and like it's not freedom if you have to be one or the other. So
I think if you want to go even like deeper undercover, right? Without like overtly teaching your kids it's BS, right?
mm,
You just carefully and selectively interpret the scriptures to like make them fit in with your agenda. Like a good example of that is there's a lot of parts of the Bible where like Jesus talks about how money is the root of all evil. The love of money is the root of all evil, I should say.
you're right.
You can't serve God and money. There's a lot of this like the lowly will be lifted up and the rich and powerful will be brought down, that sort of thing. And it's not like this is like Jude or something, or like some random book that nobody really reads. It's like this is like the big stuff, this is like
Main gospel.
Matthew,
Yeah.
the Gospels where it's like the words of Jesus supposedly, right? So like I don't know, I look at it and I'm like, how do people like really fervently believe that and then go and do the slave trade? And just as an example, like how do they like really take that seriously if they're going to be slave owners? Well, I mean the truth is that the slave owners I don't think actually did believe it, right? I think that they were just kind of like, yeah, the Bible is great and all, but money, what's really good is money, right? Um,
I don't know. I think it's a weird. I'll let you think, but I kind of disagree. But finish your thought before I like pour on
I'm
my
not talking
opinions.
about necessarily the slave owners. I'm talking about the slave traders, which the ones who actually did like the transatlantic slave trade. Because I've read about them. From what I understand, they didn't like missionaries
Hmm.
coming to preach to the slaves because they didn't want them to have any sort of sense of pride or feeling of like anybody like any sort of like we should be free because the Bible you know, definitely part of the Bible is like, let the slaves free, let everybody free, forgive debts, do all that stuff. They
Mhm.
wanted to keep them away from that because it could cause unrest within the slaves.
Mhm.
So I don't know if that meant it's like, well, the Bible for us, but not for you, or if they were just kind of like, I mean, I think in every era, there's always been people who didn't really believe it. And we're just kind of like, yeah, okay, great, sure. You think the Bible is good and all that. Yeah, yeah, definitely Jesus, Jesus. But that like, it's not really their concern. You know what I mean?
I see. I get you. I think there's
Yeah,
definitely an aspect of that for sure. Like, there's
definitely.
people that, just to fly the flag, just to survive, and then just go to their own thing. And I get that. But I
Yeah.
honestly like being in the system of the church for so long and noticing how I pull away, or forge my own way. I am noticing like the characteristics of how people shift their beliefs and what they do things, uh, because I was basically raised fundamentalist. I mean, Wesleyans are fundamentalist light, I guess I should say.
Diet fundamentalism.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Um, but what I mean by that is, yes, I totally get what you say when like money, it's better than your true core beliefs. Well, I do the same thing when I go to theaters. Like legally or intentionally, they want you to spend money at the theater for treats. But money wise, I don't want to spend $5 on a candy bar. So I go to the dollar store and spend $1, put it in my pocket, and go to the theater and cheat. I mean, I literally cheat, and I have been teaching my kids to do the same. Mostly, our theaters don't care. They don't look at your pockets. They don't look at your purse. They're just like, whatever, go enjoy the movie. So it's like they don't care, and so I use that as a justification for, yeah, I'll cheat. But honestly, if I were to own a business, if I had a heart, I'd lower the prices and say, buy our food, and we'll be really strict about it. But what seems to be happening is we'll raise the prices as high as we can to get as much money as we can, and it's that sort of thing that makes me feel like I'm justifiably able to cheat what they intend and bring in my own food. A lot of things are similar, like your compunctions or your values, your core beliefs can be challenged by justifying things in certain ways. And I think that that goes with the whole slave trade thing. Like, oh, I didn't capture the slaves, and now that they're here, I might as well partake in the slavery, even though it feels wrong. You know what I mean? Like, if you imagine yourself to be a slave owner, and so the old justifying thing. But I don't want to say like also like everything should be by the ideals and stuff like that, because that can be a whole black and white world that's just really hard to live in also. Which could very well go into one of our next things. Um, I'll transition into the next
Yeah.
topic that we
Sure.
wanted to. You had written a hypothetical situation where some lady wanted to sell her OnlyFans account to all the male members of the church. And I, being raised in the church, had thought, if you can't be a Christian and do this activity, like making or brewing alcohol or selling alcohol or being a prostitute or something like that, like if it's really against Christ, then it really should be against the law. Like if it's something you can't do as a Christian, let's just get rid of it. And I had those really strong beliefs. And now as I'm kind of thinking of things in a vastly different way, I'm thinking life is much more colorful and different than I ever allowed in the past before. And this is one of those things where I was just like, I just hope my mom doesn't watch this episode. 'Cause
Yeah. So let me talk about this hypothetical scenario that I thought of in
yeah.
my mind.
Uh-huh.
And it's, by the way, it's based on a Reddit thread about, you can cite the Reddit thread at the,
Uh-huh.
somewhere in the, flash it up on the screen. But so the hypothetical scenario is, what if you were going to a church, and there was a woman at the church who was handing out business cards, subscription cards for a free month of her OnlyFans, and her OnlyFans was like Christian themed, like a Christian themed OnlyFans, which is funny to me. Just very amusing that you can make a Christian, but
Right.
that's part of the wacky scenario. So she's going around the church passing out this subscription card, and the question that I came up with was like, is that wrong? Is that ethically wrong? And if so, why? And I came to a conclusion about the ethicalness of it. But I could talk about like what I think a lot of people would say about it. I'd be interested to hear what you have to say. But so a lot of people would say it's bad because she's
Bad can be different
causing,
than wrong.
yeah, bad or wrong, unethical. Say unethical. It's unethical because she's tempting the married members of the congregation to stray. The married men or women, if they swing that way, to stray
Yeah,
from or be
from their
tempted to.
promises or
Um, but actually, I don't think that that makes it wrong. Like it's not nice to the other women of the congregation for sure. But I think like if the man in the relationship is like excited or into it, he's probably excited or into it about OnlyFans already. He's already probably paying for OnlyFans, like, and it's not like, I mean, I guess it's worse because she's like right there, but it's not a very personal thing. You know what I mean? I mean, she's part of the church, so he sees her, right? But obviously, it's not a personal thing. It's just like this is entertainment, right?
Hmm.
So, like, I don't think that is necessarily wrong. Like, if the other thing I thought was wrong about it, um, wasn't in play, I wouldn't say that that is inherently a bad thing. Now, it puts the man in an ethical conundrum a little bit, right? Because like if he's single, like whatever, you know what I mean? Like that's not part of it at all. If he's in a relationship, then he's got to decide like yes or no, basically. And if he's in a relationship, he should, unless it's like and a spoken agreement between him and his wife, like that sort of thing would be fine. He should say no, so but it might be tempting, it could be tempting for certain men, right? And but if they're really into it and they'd be really excited about it, they'd be doing it anyway. They're probably doing worse things. So it's not like the strongest argument for me. I think like it kind of infantilizes men, right? Like a lot of purity culture kind of infantilizes men. Like if we can't keep it under wraps, under control, if we see a woman in a bikini, then what are we doing? We're not keeping it together as a gender. So it totally infantilizes men. I think it's kind of insulting, right? The other side of it is like some people just think in general, like a woman shouldn't be doing that sort of thing, right? Like that it's immodest or that it's unethical from like for herself. And then it's bad because she's like profaning her temple or whatever, like but I whatever. If people think that, I would say they can think that, but I don't think it's unethical. I think it's like you're providing a service. You're providing entertainment, right? Like it's an industry that people take part in. And the thing about OnlyFans and these kinds of like well, the person who's doing the OnlyFans mostly owns their own business. It's like they're self-employed. It's not like they're hired by a porn studio and exploited, you know. It's not like they're human trafficked. I mean, maybe some of them are for sure, but most, in this hypothetical situation, especially, this woman is
It's
not being exploited. She's she's basically profiting entirely off of the fruits of her labor, so to speak. So from that standpoint, it's better than most porn that you might come across. Like, you know, like as far as just like the ethics of consuming it, because you're not paying for somebody to be exploited. You're not paying for
Right.
somebody to exploit somebody else. You're just paying for somebody to exploit themselves, I guess. I don't know. I know everybody is exploiting themselves when they work. So um it's just a matter of like how much do you profit off of what you do, I guess. So that doesn't bother me. Um but anyway, what were your thoughts on the situation? Did you have any?
Yeah. I like your thoughts. I like your thoughts. I and I have different thoughts. So I'm not yours are not good or bad or anything. That's just like, yeah, I just have different ones. One is I thought, okay, could OnlyFans, could I do something like that and think nothing of it? And I actually thought, okay, here's an example.
Could you make an OnlyFans?
Could I make an OnlyFans and think that it was completely okay in my current frame of mind? So this is
Uh-huh,
where I start. So I said, yes, I actually think I could,
uh-huh,
but OnlyFans is not only about nakedness and doing stuff, it is about giving the other customer what they want. And
mhm,
I have heard that there are some accounts of OnlyFans where all they do is do the laundry or do the dishes or do work around the house. And
mhm,
oh my goodness, for some women, it just turns them on so bad because their husband's a lazy louse and doesn't do anything. And all they really want is a man that's receptive, listens, and does some work around the house. So when they see a man that's participating in chores that are meant for women to do, maybe they fully bought into the idea that like this is all woman stuff and they see a man that's doing it. Oh, their heart is full of flutter. And I would laugh at that because like, my whole life I'm like gender equality all the way. Like if I need to stay at home and raise the kids while the wife works, that's fine. Completely normal to me in my perspective. But man,
mhm.
what if I was, I actually did a video of me doing all of the dishes in my house. And like it got like near 1,000 views. I'm like, who would want to watch this crap? It's just me. I was like, look at me. Like I did this whole 2 hours worth of work and I put it on like a time lapse video. So like it didn't eat through a lot of footage. And it was just like, I'm practicing with my time lapse photography. Let's just mess with it. And I got a lot of views, like no comments, which I'm kind of glad for because who knows what kind of creepos are out there. But that could be a low bar of entry for me doing something like an OnlyFans, and I would laugh and fully continue to participate, even if I knew I was turning some women on. I'd be like, well, that's their issue. That is not my issue. Like, I don't think that I'm like purposefully leading them on or tempting them, but that's my mindset. But I could imagine that there's some hot and horny cougar out there that's just like, oh my goodness, he's washing dishes. I gotta go finish the job in my bedroom. Like, like and I would laugh and I would continue to make these videos. And what if somebody came to me and be like, I'll pay you $20 to like wash shoes because they're really dirty and I like dirty things. And I'll be like, well, that's the weirdest thing in the world, but here I am, like, give me $20, I'm washing shoes. Like, I think nothing of it. So like if you took that to another step or another step, I can
Mhm.
imagine somebody saying like, "Hey, this is just my body. I'm perfectly in a safe place. Like, I don't mind me showing my naughty bits and let men do what they want, and that's all on them." Like, I can imagine myself doing something like
Fine.
that, which is funny to me, but like, it could ruin marriages. I don't know, but I think that that's such a low bar, and it's just funny to me. But if you just take those same feelings and just ratchet it up a notch, you know what I mean? I could see how somebody could think, it's no big deal. My naughty bits are mine. I'm perfectly safe, that sort of thing. If a marriage is ruined, that's the man's fault. And I get that. Like you said, it's like infantilizing men. And I get that. Like men should be in full control of themselves and not just fall into temptation. I know on the flip side, there are other examples where it's more difficult. For instance, the Native Americans, their genetic lineage had almost no concept of alcohol. So when the Europeans brought over what they would consider to be, you know, breakfast beer, Like, not a problem.
Yeah.
Like, I'm fine. They got hooked on it, and so many of the Native Americans are very ad alcohol addicted prone. And it's like
Mhm.
there are some constitutions that just cannot handle certain things. And I would say now that we know that, it's not a good idea to invite somebody for alcohol who's who has that kind of a disposition. The same could be true for uh pornography addiction. Like anybody that like says I'm struggling with it should not be given any sort of a suggestive image. Like I remember going into a Kohl's one day and I saw this person exercising on, the wall, like advertising, this is the women's section. She was in a sports bra and doing a push-up, and there was nothing to see. Like, this is about as much as you saw, but I was just like, I can't handle myself right now. I've got male hormones. And I just like wanted to do my thing. Which I thought at the time was like they were horrible for putting up such a lewd picture on the wall. And then, a month later, I saw the exact same picture and I laughed at myself for even like thinking such a thing. Like, this is ludicrous. It's just a lady in a sports bra. I see it 100 times a day, on TV or whatever. It's not nothing. So like hormones are weird and they make you see things or make you do things that you would not have intended otherwise. So that's really weird. But in general, so I am coming out of a type of Christianity that is, this is what God wants, and I am prescribing what is good or bad based on that. And if you do those things, you're good or bad. I'm getting out of that zone, that sort of thinking that's black or white. And even in Christianity, it's a relationship. It's not laws. It's whatever Jesus says. And even Jesus says, go forth and sin no more. And it's a relationship, which is, I get that, but I'm a step further past that. And I think I am coming to understand that in a metaphysical sense of the word, we are all one. In a
Mhm.
metaphysical sort of way, we are a part of God in a sort of a way that means I'm not controlling the whole tree, but I am a leaf on the tree. I'm attached to this thing, but I have no control as far as I know. Like, I can't be like healing people as far as my current abilities. But somehow we're all connected. And you remember that song? Do 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 do, like sweet dreams are made of these. Um,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
that song,
Songs on English.
it's so weird. Like part of the lyrics are, some of them wanna abuse you, some of them wanna be abused by you. And I'm like, that's weird. Who would ever want to be abused? Just like that is just a weird lyrics, weird song. Doesn't make any sense. But in a spiritual frame of mind, if you think of school as classroom earth and the things that you experience, you're learning from, and it's not really affecting you, the spirit behind the avatar of your flesh suit,
Mhm.
you're learning something. So all the abuse, all of the whatever, is a learning opportunity for your soul. Now, I'm not saying that we should let abuse continue. I don't like that. I hate that idea.
Mhm.
And any injustice should be righted. But if it is the case that like we're learning and everything can be a lesson, I also think that like the rightness and wrongness of things in that sort of a frame of mind is 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 not the right question to be asking, if that makes sense. Like if Earth and everything in it is a lesson that you're learning and an experience to behold, you can learn something and gather something even from a bad situation. Like you can learn what it feels like to have a broken heart because your wife left you because she got turned on by somebody doing dishes. I mean, that
Mhm.
could be a positive within a negative. Like, oh, the experience was great overall, but it sucked while I was in it. Like watching a horror movie. Like it sucked to be like so scared, but like in the end, I'm so thrilled I got to watch it. But now I feel safe, you know,
Mhm.
in the grander context of things. I almost believe there is no wrong that we can do in this experience. Now, granted, when I'm suffering individually and right here in the now, I don't hold those beliefs very well because I'm like, this sucks, get me out of here. I don't like this. Um, but
Right.
if I had my higher self sort of perspective, I would say this is a lesson I can learn and is valuable. And the concept of right or wrong do not have a place when experience in all of creation is a positive because we chose to be here. So that would make my mom cringe because she raised her boy better than that, and Christianity would say I'm a heretic. Well, it's kind of where I am, I guess. So,
Well, I mean, yeah, Unitarian Universalist Church and all, but um, no, I, I, I do think that it is unethical for. Now, I would say there's a difference between unethical and like wrong or bad or naughty or sinful or whatever you want to call it. I would say it's unethical though, for somebody to sell, not to sell OnlyFans subscriptions at all. That's that's a key
but to
distinction.
target, but for targeted people who want to be in a committed relationship, and you're targeting them, I would agree.
Well, not even so much that, but like to sell an OnlyFans subscription at church to
Where the church would look down on it, and the reason you're in church is because you're in a community of people that have certain values, and those certain values are against this whole proposition. I would agree with that too. Yeah,
well, and not even so
like
much that. No, I would even take it a step further. I would take it to what you were talking about actually a minute ago, where you were talking about like, and I know that like on one hand I don't want to like infantilize men, but on the other hand, like you were talking about like walking in Target and seeing a woman in a sports bra and like flipping out because like how could they allow something so, and it was just like where you were at in that moment, like hormonally or whatever.
yeah,
Like, but in general, it's actually, I think it's worse or like harder on, and in general, OnlyFans is like harder on single men, right? Like, I think if you're in a relationship where you're happy, um, it, and if you're in a relationship where you're happy, uh, that's the if, right? Like stuff like that doesn't get to you as much because you're like
right.
satisfied. Like
I
you
agree.
have a woman in your life, and if you are single, uh being like looking at porn or like going on OnlyFans can kind of be like a proxy for being in a relationship. Or if you're like, I mean, in some cases, some men are like really unsatisfied, and it's like a proxy for what they wish their relationship was like. Just like you were talking about, like doing the dishes, and it makes women really excited, right? Like, this is what they wish their relationship was like.
Hmm.
Or like, why do women read romance novels, right? It's because it's like they wish that they would get to have these kinds of experiences, that sort of thing.
Hmm.
But I think the point of church and religion in general should be at its one of its highest purposes, not its only highest purpose, but one of its highest purposes is to like help people learn how to be in relationship with each other, right? I sound very like pastoral right now, but like I I think that that's the goal, right? Like you're supposed to be in relationship with each other. You're supposed to be learning how to be in relationship with each other. And like OnlyFans is kind of like it can be sort of like a proxy for a relationship. Maybe it's a guidepost. Maybe it's like a sign. If you're that like if you're a woman and you're in a relationship and you're like finding yourself on OnlyFans paying for to watch some guy do housework, maybe that's a sign, you know, maybe that's a sign that
Things are not
you
well.
should, yeah, like something is wrong, something is amiss in your relationship. Yeah, if you're in like a sexless marriage or something like that, like, uh-oh, like that could be a sign. But at the same time, if you're going to church, I think it should be a place where you're like encouraged to like look at that stuff in the face instead of trying to find like workarounds around it. Like that the point of church is to like help people like be better spouses, be better, lovers, I mean, maybe not better lovers, but maybe like, like to be in relationship with each other. And I feel like OnlyFans, as much as I'm like fine with it on one level, right? Like it's a workaround for a lot of people. And so that's why I think it's unethical to sell an OnlyFans subscription at church.
Mm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I do think that like in general, like I like the Danish model of like, yeah, just to let prostitutes do what they want to do because it allows them an income and it's not predatory. It's like not the pimp selling off his girls, but the girls making an income and
Hmm.
guys can control themselves or whatever. Like in European countries, people can walk around naked and as long as they're not like actively being purposefully lewd, it's just a
Hmm.
different culture over there. But yeah, I think that in general, like the type of ethics that are like, if it's not great for all of society, it's not great, sort of a idea that like we're going to like, then it shouldn't be done. And I can agree with that too. Yeah.
And I'm not even necessarily saying if it's not great for all of society, then it shouldn't be done. Because like I actually don't think that either. I'm
Mm.
just saying that the church, in particular, a church, the point of church is one specific thing. So if you're going, unless you're going to like the church of like free love or something like that, in which case that's a different kind of church, right? But like if you're going to a church where the point is like we learn how to be in community with each other, we learn how to be better spouses, we learn how to be better sons and daughters, we learn how to be better friends, we learn how to develop social skills. Because that to me is like that's one of the highest purposes of church. Somebody comes in and subverts that, it's it just kind of sucks. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like it's like you're just like thumbing your nose at the whole idea of that.
I do like
Yeah.
that idea of church, but I don't feel like I've been raised in a church that that would highlight that. I think it most churches I've been a part of is we want to teach you proper theology, a proper way of thinking, less proper way of living in community. But had church been more a proper way of living in community, I would dig that. I really would. That'd be cool.
Sad. And
Yeah.
on that bummer note,
We can go on to the next one if you want to.
sure.
Pastor smoking pot. Is that the next one?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So I don't have as much thoughts on this one. I actually didn't really come to a firm conclusion, but like, okay, so say you live in Washington State where smoking pot is legal,
Legal.
right?
Okay. Yeah.
It's legal to smoke weed here.
Yeah.
You're part of a church, but maybe let's exclude Unitarian Universalists, or let's exclude like Rastafarians, because obviously that would be.
Yeah.
But
What they are into.
if you're part of a church, even Buddhist church, I think this would be apt. Um, a Buddhist congregation, I don't know what they call them. Uh,
Temple.
temple, yeah, there you go. And somebody saw the pastor smoking pot. Like, what's the appropriate response to that? I know what I would do personally, but it's just because I'm kind of like um that meme, where it's like, right, you know what meme I'm talking about. Generally about most things, unless it's really bad. But like what should be done in that situation?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I didn't have a firm thought about that one. What do you think?
What's really interesting is that I had heard that in ancient Israel, their incense pots used to contain marijuana. Like
Mhm.
they used to actually put it in there and, you know, wave it around as a scent offering or whatever, and it
Just
would
like
basically get people
hotboxing.
high.
Yeah.
And so like I used to believe in a frame of reference where anything that happened in the Bible and was prescribed by the church or the temple, and what described God was good and that we should follow it. And to learn that they used to do that makes me say, "Oh, it must be okay. Yeah." And you know, so if some viewers are watching this right now and didn't realize that they actually did have pot or marijuana in the incense that was a part of the ritualistic ceremony, that might break somebody's faith into or something. Because we're taught it's wrong. But I am believing that like there are certain things that God has given us to help us get into a different frame of mind to discover different aspects of God, different aspects of reality, that sort of thing. I haven't really participated in psychedelics, though I'm kind of interested in it. Um, and so I think just it's a cultural thing at this point. Um, because our culture is shifting from it's terrible and it's a class one drug to it's legal in several states for recreational use. So throw out the culture thing. At this point, it's moot. Morally speaking, I think if the culture says this is okay if you're an adult and your brain is done developing because it makes you dumber, when you're developing, especially, then I think it can be done responsibly. And if the pastor's doing it, there's one of two things. He's trying to get into he or she is trying to get into a frame of mind where you're more open and discovering what God is talking to you about, or your life sucks and you're just trying to get some good thrills and kicks out of it. Like, so one is a positive aspect, perhaps, and one is more of a negative thing. Like the pastor is such in a bad spot that they need a substance to feel better. And that I think is more of a negative thing that we could communally prescribe. Like that's not a great thing. But I think it's contextual. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
I think if the pastor's like, I'm smoking pot, hey kids, like this is okay. No, like you gotta tell your kids when you're a grown up, this is okay. Contextually, that might maybe acceptable, but without that contextualization of age being a factor, it would be wrong. So dang it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, I don't personally think that smoking pot is wrong.
It stinks though.
Um, it is smelly when you say that. It reminds me of NNU. Like they had this little like thing, this little like box, and it had a bunch of like holes in it, and each hole had a label, right? This was in like health class at NNU. And they're like, we know you all haven't like been around drugs much because you're a bunch of like goody two shoes kids, but smell this and you'll know what the drugs smell like,
Uh-huh.
So it's like the smell of the drugs in each little hole in this
Yep.
box, right? So they were passing it around. And and I remember heroin smelled like my grandma. It
Uh,
smelled like it was weird. Yeah. And then I got to weed and I was like, oh, this smells like my high school. Like I said aloud in class, like this smells like my high school.
wow.
I have ADHD. It's anyway. But yeah, so I don't know. Like I mean, as far as like personally, I agree with what you're saying about like why is the pastor doing it? It's like, are they just trying to like bend their consciousness a little bit and like have minor fun, or are they like doing it as a crutch? I mean, personally, yeah, if I see somebody who's just like a serious pothead and that's like all they do, and it's like their identity, and they're like, yeah, I just like smoke so much weed and just like always high, and like, I feel kind of like bad.
Yeah. Like
Kind of bad.
why?
Oh, that sounds awful. Like
After
you're
a while,
so,
that's the only happiness you can get.
yeah, or just like they're just like so uncomfortable in their normal mindset that they have to be on
Stoned.
drugs all the time.
Right.
Right. And also like, does that mean it should be illegal for everyone? No. It's like just because somebody has the potential to misuse something doesn't mean it shouldn't be used. It's kind of my thought. But as far as like whether or not a pastor should do it or not, I would say it depends on like I would guess. I don't really have like a strong feeling about this because like on one hand, I think being a pastor is a job, right? You are working. Like I go to work, I work for 8 hours a day, and then when I get done, it's like I'm on my own time, right? If I do something
Yeah.
illegal and like get put in prison because of it, then I can't do my job anymore, right? So I want to be free so that I can keep because I like my job and I like my life. And so I want to be free and do what I'm doing, you know. So but in a place where we is legal, you can't really say that about the pastor. Maybe I'd go with Paul on this one a little bit. Like try that out. That
Idea
Paul
that,
says like
yeah.
I don't think that eating meat sacrificed to animals is bad, personally. It's like I think it's fine, but I wouldn't eat meat in front of somebody who thought it
Who had a
was
weaker,
bad.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because yeah, like a weaker faith, he says, because I don't want to make them stumble. And I think that's
Mhm.
probably if you are a pastor at a church where that actually would have the effect, it's like unfortunately, as much as I want to be able to say, yeah, like um, it's a job and you should be able to not have to do that all the time. It's like, I mean, at least like do it in your basement where nobody's gonna see you. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
um, just because I think it's kind of like it's just kind of like disrespectful to the trust that people put in you as a pastor. Now,
Hmm.
if you're like at a Rastafarian church, you better be smoking pot a lot more. So yeah, it just
Yeah.
depends. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, how are we doing on time? Because like we started.
Oh, let's just move on down then. What about the devil? Uh,
So
how did you?
I saw this video of this guy that I don't remember exactly what it was about, but um, he basically proposed the idea of like, what if the devil was actually on God's payroll, basically, sort of a thing. Like, what if
Mhm.
the devil plays a part in like a purposeful and good part in what God has done or created. And in some ways, I agree with that. Like when in my early more evangelical sort of thinking is the basic story is God created all the angels and then some of the angels fell away saying, I don't want anything to do with you, God, I'm doing my own thing. And hence the devil fell to earth or whatever, became a snake with legs and convinced Adam and Eve to do something God told him not to do. Whatever. That's the story, though it's not laid out in the Bible.
Mhm.
So that's a fun story. Haha, he's our enemy. Anything he says or does, you should resist. That sort of a thing. Good for you. Resist the devil. And some people put him on like such a high platform, it's almost like equal powers, like darkness and light, and they're fighting. When really all of theology basically says, hold a candle in the dark, and the darkness flees, and it's candles this big, and darkness runs away. It's there's no comparison between dark and light. So why are we even like making this equality sort of a thing? What I'm coming to understand in a different way of thinking is if we think of Earth as a school and all experiences being a good thing, even though they can be hard, is that even temptation, even succumbing to temptation, can be good. And I have that same sort of a vibe when it comes to even when the state or the government is prosecuting, not persecuting, but prosecuting you, saying, you, Joe, did some awful, horrible thing. Do you have a lawyer? You can't afford it? All right. we're giving you a lawyer. Like, it comes from the government to fight against the government. Like, does that make
Hmm.
sense? It has the same vibe. Like, here is God,
Mhm.
all of goodness, all of that which is good, has created this thing to fight against itself. And
Mhm.
I think of the devil in those sort of similar terms. Like, I feel like the devil plays a very important role in this experience of life that we have.
You think
Um,
there is a devil?
uh,
Literal
I
devil?
think I think it's more of a position than a person, if that makes sense.
No. Well,
The
sort of. Yeah.
because in the Bible, God said Jesus says, the accuser,
Mhm.
you must, fight against the accuser. And the
Mhm.
accuser is not the name of a person. It is a position in relations. It is a position in relationship. Anybody that opposes you or that accuses you is the
Mhm.
accuser. And in that
Mhm.
way, I think there is, just like the lawyer is not an individual, but a position.
Mhm.
So I think that there are many people, and we can even be the devil when it comes to someone's story. For instance,
Mhm.
Peter, when he said, "Oh, Jesus, you shouldn't go to the cross," and Jesus said, "Get away from me, Satan. Get away from me, accuser. Like, you're tempting me right now. You are the position of devil." He's not saying that Peter has always been the devil, the fallen star, the one, the bright, whatever. And so I
Mhm.
think that the position of the accuser is both helpful in the grand scheme of things, but also like it's got a job to do, and you should be resisting it. Does that make sense?
Mhm. It does make sense. It's an interesting idea. Yeah, I like it. I think that's fun. I've kind of like dropped, like over the years, I've kind of dropped the idea of the devil or like, um, yeah, like a malicious God or something like
Mm-hmm.
that.
Right.
Um,
A, a
but
dualistic sort of
like,
thinking, yeah.
yeah, but I do think like evil is like it's like a function of partially of entropy, right? So like just this idea that like in a very physical sense, right? There's different strategies for playing the game of life. You could be a cooperative, you could be competitive, or you could be kind of like a combination of the two, or you could be like competitive but with certain ethics, that sort of thing. But I would say like people who are 100% only out for themselves and their strategy for playing the game, is basically like we always try to cheat, we always try to win, no matter what the cost. I would say that is like for sure evil. I would say that's definitely different than what you're talking about though, like where you could be a devil even with good intentions to somebody because you're tempting them to do something other than what they should do. And also like I do think like coming back to your OnlyFans idea about like making a video of like um vacuuming the carpet.
And
My
turning on
thought
all the
about
ladies.
that, yeah, my thought about that is that like if you're doing that and somebody looks at that and that's so exciting to them, that's like I'm not saying you're the devil to them, but you are kind of like a sign. You are kind of like a guidepost. Like it's a problem. It's a problem if that's that exciting to a woman, right? Like it's
It's a red
it
flag
probably is
for
a
her
sign.
situation, yeah.
Yeah, it's a red flag for a situation. Like I'm not saying that I'm great at chores or anything, but like I try, like uh I do my best. And if the guy that she's with is just like, well, you're my live-in maid and I don't really care, that's a problem. So, you know, um, or like, if a guy is spending all of his time on OnlyFans, you know, spending money on, I don't know, women dancing or whatever, being naked or whatever, it's maybe a sign, that like he's not not so happy in his relationship. I mean, there's a fine line. It's like on one hand, like that sort of thing is like not necessarily a sign of that. Like dude's just like looking at women. But on the other hand, like, you know, if he's like addicted to it, he's stuck on it, he can't get off of it, and like he just spends like all of his spare time doing it. Uh-oh. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of like, that's a sign.
Right.
It's a little bit of a guidepost that, like, you know, maybe something isn't right, and at least probably should go to couples counseling and like talk it through, you know. So yeah, I see what you're saying. Like I I think that without being evil, people can kind of like nudge you towards like, here's some things that you need to work on. Here's some like weak points. Here's some things that you have to work on. Here's some issues. And like the idea of like the devil as like a as an accuser, it's an interesting one.
Yeah.
And
And I
yeah.
think that there could even be, if Earth is a school, if we are supposed to learn things, I think there are many times in which people need to be poked and prodded into testing their grit, or testing their morals, or testing their whatever, like the determination. And so I do think that a loving God would put a stumbling block or a test in the way. Like at school, like you're going to be tested. You're going to be given a quiz, and it's hard and it sucks. And it made me cry to learn algebra in school. Like it really did. And it sucked. But the school was doing it for a good thing. Like there are
Mhm.
things that hurt and suck, but they're good. When you have something that needs fixed and you need a surgery, they're going to cut your perfectly healthy flesh, get to the problem and get it out. And this cut hurts and it sucks and it hurts your body and your cells. It's killing things all along the way to get to the thing to take it out. And I think on the grander scale of things, if everything in the whole universe were puppies and rainbows and unicorns and love, but Earth was the thing that sucked the most in the universe, that's a small price to pay for a learning and growing environment for
Mhm.
souls or whatever,
Mhm.
but it could be viewed as good from a different perspective. And I do think that in that way, that God, that the holy goodness could give you some royal suck, and you would call it evil, but it isn't necessarily. And so that's why I view the devil in the same terms that I view like an appointed lawyer from the government to fight the government, but reversed, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, so that reminds me of two things. That makes me think of two things.
Sure.
Hopefully I can tie them in. Anyway, so I had a coworker pass away recently. Her name is Svetlana. Um, she died in a car crash actually. And it was very tragic. She was, I think, 49, so pretty young. And like everybody loved Svetlana because she was in everybody's business, but in like a way that you were happy about, right? Like she was just so friendly, and nice, and just like wanted to talk to you and wanted to hear from you. And she gave she gave fun advice. She was always like interested in how your relationships were going, you know. And I remember when I first had my daughter, you know, we were at a work event, and I brought my wife and daughter, and she always wanted to have a girl. She had five sons, actually, five sons. She never had a daughter. And she took my daughter, we handed my daughter to her. My daughter was only like 6 months old or 4 months old or something. And she just held my daughter. And it was after a while, it was like starting to get uncomfortable because we were like, so are you ever gonna give her back? You know? Because she was just like so like she just loved this little girl. She didn't even know her, you know, but she just loved her. Svetlana is a great person. Like, and she worked as an immigration counselor. So not like a lawyer, but like um immigration counselors. It's one of the few areas of law, maybe the only area of law where you can get trained on how to like help people with paperwork, basically. And so you're just trying to help people either bring their family members over, if they've been here for a while, to become lawful permanent residents, that sort of thing. So she did a lot of that kind of work, and she helped a lot of people just in her job. But then also she was just really nice to be around in general. So everybody was just like devastated and crying. And
When she died.
when she died, yeah, at her funeral, and at her memorial we had a memorial for her at our work. And it was really weird, actually. Just a side note on that, because I know you were into that like paranormal and near-death experience type stuff. So I like a week, or not even a week before she passed away, went on a trip for work to Tacoma with my boss, and stayed at a hotel. And so I was in my hotel room that evening, and I had this feeling that I've only felt once before. And it was this like sad little, wistful little goodbye feeling.
Mm.
And the only time I had ever had it before that was when my ex-wife's mom passed away. I felt that feeling, and then I got a text from my ex saying that her mom had passed away. It was like the sad, like, see, parting is such sweet sorrow kind of feeling. And I had this feeling out of the blue. I didn't even know that Svetlana had been in an accident at this point. I was like, oh no, somebody died? And
Did you have the sense it was from her, or just a general sense that
just a
somebody had
general,
passed?
it's it's not like I am Svetlana and bye. It was just like it was just that feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, did somebody die? You know? And then a couple of days later, one of my former church worship bandmates' daughter was killed in a car crash. But like, I didn't know her at all, right? So I was like, well, maybe it was that. I hope it was just that. And and not that like, I wanted that to happen, but just like I hope that that was the only death, like there's not more coming, kind of thing. But I didn't know her, so it would have been weird if she was like, bye. So I was like, oh, I don't know. So, but then I found out that Svetlana died. And my wife, it was weird, like she doesn't remember names that well. And so she didn't necessarily remember who Svetlana was. But the night that Svetlana died, we were talking about how I heard that she was in a car crash and that was like fighting for her life. And I was talking to my wife about this. And like the night that she actually passed away, my wife, like her face just flashed into my wife's mind, and she suddenly knew who I was talking about. So like this woman was like obviously like an ascended being, I mean, if there is one, she's obviously a very like, powerful like force of love in the world, but I had a dream the other night where I actually met Svetlana again. Like it was a dream, and I saw her in my dream.
Did you say last night?
The other night, not last night,
Okay.
but a few nights ago. And I was like, hi, like I'm so glad to see you again. And she couldn't really talk that well. But I was like, so, how is it on the other side? And I don't know why I started with like, is it bad? No. She shook her head no. I was like, but is it good? She said, no. But it was like, obviously it's not nothing either, because she's here, she's talking to me, right? Like she exists in some sense. But like, I was like, I think what she was trying to tell me is she is bummed that she didn't get to keep going on this ride. She wanted to be here, even though like it's fun there and everything, like for all of its ups and downs and all the crazy stuff that's going on. She wanted to be here. She enjoyed it. And I believe that because I've never met anybody who seemed so excited about life, you know, excited about other people, excited about the world. Like she was just pumped to be here. And I was like, you know what? She is enlightened. That's enlightenment right there. You know, like Buddhism, it's like trying to get you there, but like I don't think it does, because it's like if you have to like become detached from everything and not love it,
Mm.
that's not really enlightenment, you know? That's like cosplaying as enlightenment, you know? Oh, I'm so
Mm.
detached, that's holy. No, like that's like that's like going so far, and maybe this is Buddha's point actually. That's like going so far the other direction that you think it's bad to even like want to want things or want to love and want to be happy. You know what I mean? Like that's
Right.
going too far, you know. Like if you don't love, if you're not like in it, you're not like doing the thing, like what are you even doing here? That's like the point.
Yeah.
So so I think that that was a profound experience and moment for me.
Hmm.
One that I struggle with because I'm like, oh, sometimes I just want to like veg out and like stare at my phone.
Right. Hmm. Well, I don't want to keep going just to like finish off the interesting things or whatever. Because I don't really. The next one is, would I rearrange the canon or create a different one? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to. I don't even want to go there right now.
That's fine. We don't have to go there.
Yeah, it's an interesting question though. I mean, you could
Yeah.
go there if you want to. Would you have recreated the canon if you could?
There's not so much to recreate the canon, but like, are there any books in the Bible that you think just kind of are,
Not
you
great.
know, not great?
Yeah. Well,
And yeah.
yeah. I mean, I was. We were just talking about the book of Job, and I almost said, yeah, I don't like that book because
Really?
I mean, yeah, I get how the main thrust of the book is you can still suffer and do nothing wrong. You know, like the bad things do happen to good people. And you don't have to say, oh, bad things happen to you. You must have done something wrong. That's like the basic thrust of it, right? I mean, that's how a lot of my good Christian friends cling to it and say, this is a great book. Because it shushes all the people that say, oh, like this sin, you're blind because you sinned. That's like Jesus said, no, like this has nothing to do with his sin or his family's sin. But it's a very common belief to say if you're struggling, it's all your fault, you know. And that book kind of firmly says no, you can do everything right and still bad stuff happens. But what it makes me think is like, okay, so Job wanted to basically have his day in court with God, and God did respond, "Oh, but can you make the behemoth? Can you make the mountains melt in your presence? Can you make it rain? Do you know how to change the leopard spots? No, you don't. So you can shut up now." And then like Job was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I am wrong to even exist." And God doesn't give a response, but basically says, "Yeah, Job's friends, you suck. You are in the wrong." And Job will present an offering and then I'll forgive you. Bye. And in the end, it makes me think,
Bye.
okay, the lesson to be learned is might makes right. If you have the power, if you have the capacity, you can do it and it's right. Because what happened was God made Job's life miserable and said, well, you can't do what I can. Bye.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's not a good lesson to learn. That doesn't show you that God is love. It just says that God is powerful. And had Job had all those abilities, and he could have squared off with God and had more of an argument, it seems, from God's perspective, from the
Yeah.
Bible. Yeah, I can count the number of sands on the seashore, and I have made Leviathan out of nothingness. Ha ha, now let's have an argument. What you did was wrong. Oh, you're so right, Job. I was a jerk. Cause you're threatening me. But no, it didn't
Yeah.
end like that, so
Right. course.
Yeah, whatever. So
Yeah. It's funny, I've given this some thought. I think I would toss Revelation. Not that like actually Revelation is kind of fun.
yeah, it's very imaginative for sure.
Yeah, it's fun. I'd put it in the appendices maybe. Um, or something like that. Not because I don't think it should be suppressed. I just don't think people should take it so seriously. Like
Right.
it's
I
like
think it's like John's way of dealing with his trauma of being locked up. Like, oh, I'll get revenge on you. I'm a part of the Christianity, and Jesus is gonna come back and smite you all. When really, like,
yeah.
that is antithetical to the Jesus that tells you to love your enemies and forgive your enemies and make the world a better place through the kingdom of heaven. And it's just it's not the Jesus that was talked about in the gospel. So it doesn't
Right.
make sense.
Yeah. Yeah, that and I think it's so vague and random that anybody could interpret whatever they wanted out of it, really. I mean
Yeah.
you could say, well, all the stuff in it sort of already happened.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's kind of like it's all over. Like we've moved on to a different level, like this is post everything that happened in Revelation right now. So it doesn't really apply to us. It's just an interesting, I mean, it's an
Mm-hmm.
apocalypse, right? It's supposed to show you the spiritual stuff that's going on behind the facade of physical reality or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I mean, you can also say, well, it definitely applies to us. And Russia is the Antichrist, and I mean, whatever. I
Yeah.
mean, you can make it mean whatever you want. So that
Yeah.
one, Jude. Okay, this is gonna be a weird one. Jude, is not a terrible book by itself, but if you have Jude in there, you also need to include the book of Enoch, because otherwise nobody knows what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like I think you can leave Jude in if you put the book of Enoch in. But if you have the book of Enoch out of the Bible, then you should leave the book of Jude out, because otherwise it's just kind of like sounds like the ramblings of a crazy person, sort of. Like, who are all these people that he's talking about that I've never heard of? And like, who are all these beings? Because he's riffing on the book of Enoch and like talking about how it applies to Christianity and stuff. It's just like actually super interesting, but only if you've read that book, which I haven't. Have you?
Mm-hmm.
You
Enoch,
read it? Yeah.
I think I have. Yeah.
Have you?
And
Yeah.
I noticed that the Bible does reference it a few times. I'm like, oh, hey, this was in the Bible, because they reference Enoch. Yeah. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Jesus, I think he
And
was
then
also. You think even Jesus
he
referenced it?
borrowed from it.
I think he referenced a thing or two from it, but I'll have to look into it.
Yeah. Maybe it's not so much that like I would take Jude out, but maybe more that I would just like be like the Ethiopians and add it in, you know.
Hmm.
I don't
Yeah.
know. Add the Book of Enoch in, just because like otherwise Jude makes no sense. Um, and then Second Timothy.
Hmm.
Second Timothy exemplifies everything that bothers me about like evangelical Christianity. Like it's like all of the like the most toxic aspects of it. But I mean, granted, like it's like from a time when Christians suffered a lot more, right? But the main, as I remember, the main point of the book is just that like suffering is part of holiness. If you're not suffering, you're not a real Christian, you're not a
Hmm.
real G, you're a poser, like
Hmm.
it's kind of like supposedly Paul's going away address, but like it mostly just sounds like he's miserable and having a real bad time and he's gonna die soon and like everybody's
Hmm.
turned against him, you know. But like, only the real G's last until the end, that sort of thing. Um, and I don't like maybe you could put it in the appendices, but it doesn't really apply to modern day Christianity. Christians aren't persecuted in this country. Maybe in some countries, but they're not persecuted in this one. But since it talks on and on about how you're like not a real G unless you're not a real C unless you're persecuted, like they find ways to like be persecuted, like to invent these like weird persecution narratives. And it's all a bunch of
Right.
like games that they play with themselves and with the culture. It's like, oh, you
Yeah.
didn't like that I started condemning gay people. Oh, persecution. Ah, it's just it's total BS. Um, and then I guess the fourth one is Titus. Titus, on account of the fact that um it's like all of the racist, anti-Semitic, sexist, like um pro-slavery parts
Hmm.
condensed into a book. It's like at the beginning, he's talking about how we shouldn't hold to the Jewish myths, like the evils of the distracting Jewish myths, which I think is amusing because then, like in Jude, he talks about Jewish myths. I couldn't fail to like see
Hmm.
the he's talking about the Book of Enoch, which is a Jewish myth, right? So like, it's silly, but anyway, and then like he goes on to say that slaves should obey their masters and like do everything they say, don't talk back to them, don't cheat them, because like that, that's good. Slavery is fine, and if you do your job of being a slave real well, then you'll convert people, because you'll convert people to Christianity. So goody goody. So it's super pro-slavery, it's super anti-Semitic, and then like just generally talking smack about everybody. Like there's a section where he's going on about how the Cretians are lazy and ignorant and stupid or something like that. And it's to people in Crete, like, you're surrounded by all these dolts, I don't know. Anyway, so those books, those books don't have a ton of
Value.
I don't see they have a ton of value for Christians
Yeah.
in this culture. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. So uh anything else that you wanted to talk about, or do we make it through our agenda pretty well? You had like a bunch of interesting terms that you had listed off.
I just find these to be really interesting. Like I didn't know
Yeah.
there was some of these things.
Mhm.
They're so quick. I'll just run through them all.
Sure.
Hair eschatology, the
Hmm.
doctrine of dealing with matters after death, but before the end of the world. So like just talking about like what happens after you die, but before the new earth or before the end times or whatever. But that was an interesting term. We also got panpsychism, which is the doctrine or belief that everything material, however small, has an element of individual consciousness, um, i.e., animism. But there might be a difference between animism and panpsychism. But
Hmm.
the way I've been thinking about that now is like if creation or if the meta explanation of spirituality is like all that there is a tree and I'm a leaf and I cannot control the tree. Well, Jesus had the example of I'm the vine and you are the branches or whatever. I mean, I that's cool. Like we get our information about who God is through a higher source.
Hmm.
And yet there's more to it than that. So you can label it a leaf, a branch, a leaf, a twig, a branch, a trunk, a forest, ecosystem or however, and each has their own name and could in naming have a different personality, but I don't know. But it's kind of a cool idea.
Yeah.
There's a term we can riff off of these if you want, but I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
The next one is transpersonal.
Hmm.
It might be hard to explain. I'm just going to read it. Experiences in which the sense of identity or self extends beyond the individual or personal to encompass wider aspects of humankind, life, psyche, or cosmos. So you might have a transpersonal experience, meaning um, in a hypnosis, you might
Hmm.
feel having had an experience, but it wasn't actually you, or feeling one with something beyond who you are. So that's kind of cool. For instance, something else along the line is crypto cryptomnesia occurs when a forgotten memory returns without it being recognized as such by the subject, who believes it is something new and original. It is a memory bias whereby a person may falsely recall generating a thought, an idea, a tune, a name, or a joke, not deliberately engaging in plagiarism, but rather experiencing a memory as if it was new inspiration. For instance, I thought I wrote a new piece of music. And people are like, oh yeah, that's good. Isn't that the beginning of The Little Mermaid? And I was like, oh dang, you're right. And I
I
was
thought it
like,
was
dang.
something else.
But I think there's more to it than that. I think that some people can have memories or encounters or feelings or senses that come from somebody else, and maybe like a downloaded thought or idea or something from beyond
Mhm.
themselves. And so that's an interesting
Mm.
term I hadn't heard of, cryptomnesia.
I've definitely had experience a lot, like where you steal an idea, but you don't even know that you're stealing it. And then, yeah, or you can borrow an idea I don't know, yeah, like the being in the zeitgeist, kind of transpersonal,
Yeah.
like putting those two things together, having everybody kind of having the same idea at the same time.
Yeah, right,
Um,
right. Yeah.
yeah, without talking about it, just kind of like,
Connecting
yeah,
dots. I've also heard that it was
yeah.
like the 100th monkey analogy. Like one monkey can be like doing something different than all the other monkeys don't do. And then it can be
Hmm.
taught to their generation or whatever. And then like all like around like the 100th time that the different monkeys do it, it catches on in some other island where there's been no communication or no
Oh,
whatever.
crazy.
It's really interesting how like once something is learned to enough of like a species, it like the thought jumps to another that hasn't had any relations or communication
Mm.
with. And that's called like the 100th monkey phenomenon or something weird like that. You should look
Cool.
into it. It's kind of cool.
Okay.
After The next one is called after death communications or ADC, a spontaneous phenomenon in which a living person has a feeling or a sense of a direct contact with a deceased person. Da da
That's
da da
funny.
da.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of what I
Your experience
experienced.
with what's her name?
Yeah. Svetlana.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I
Pretty
was
weird.
reading this, and they said it is possible that the visions of Jesus after his crucifixion were this, and it might not have been necessarily a bodily. I mean, yeah, if life is a simulation, then what is the physical? Like what is the physical? But if there is a difference between the two, there have been people who have shooken hands with, held, hugged, communicated with, even received objects from somebody who's dead and has
Mm.
just wanted to have a communication with before they passed on, like a really tangible, like there's plenty of evidence of people experiencing a physical sort of a communication with someone after they'd passed on. And this person I
Yeah.
was reading saying, well, maybe this when Jesus came back from the tomb, maybe this was a after death communication, shared one with lots of people. So that was
Mhm.
really interesting and kind of a trippy idea.
Yeah.
Almost
I
done.
mean, Paul says like that Jesus appeared to 500 people, last of all to me,
Yeah.
which he puts his experience in the same category as everybody else's experience.
Yeah.
And he says he appeared to me. So, I mean, I don't know. I kind of think that's what happened. That doesn't mean like I think that Jesus was fake or whatever, like or that that wasn't
Right.
real, but I think
Right.
it was real. I think that he did come back and like say what's up,
I
see
know.
ya.
And Jesus is still,
Yeah.
he's like still talking to people. Like
Yeah.
people have experiences where they like seeing Jesus left and right. And we're seeing all these stories here
Yeah.
on the internet if you want to look for them.
Oh yeah. Totally.
One. it makes total sense here, but it's called spiritually transformative experience, an experience in which it causes a person to perceive themselves and the world profoundly differently. So, just like a near-death experience could be a spiritually transformative experience, so could like doing a bunch of mushrooms or something.
Mhm.
And then I've heard of some people like in a trance or in meditation go visit the Akashic Library. This is, a little on the woo-woo side, but basically it's a library of everybody's experiences. You can open up a book of somebody's life and just like read their experiences. And this is called imprinting, the spiritual act of taking memories or stories from the Akashic records and making them a part of the story or backstory of the incarnated person or the person who's like doing the meditation or whatever. The reason I
Wow.
think that that's kind of interesting is there was an episode of Doctor Who where in the future humanity has become so advanced that they can go back in time and retrieve all of the experiences from somebody seconds or milliseconds before they die, record
Huh.
their knowledge and put it on a hard drive and then let them pass. So one time Doctor Who accidentally got sucked into this experience where this guy was just about ready to die, and there was nothing anybody could do about it. But the like future humans were recording this guy's experiences, and Doctor Who was like, something's not right about this. And I've thought about that ever since. Like, what if like everybody's experiences were recorded and you could access them and like download them as if they were yours? And here, like this, it's a phenomenon in like spiritual circles, woo-woo circles. So I'm like, well, that's kind of interesting and fascinating. So
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah.
I
Maybe that's where they
know.
got the idea from.
I know. I like to mess with this
That's
stuff. It's like
interesting.
as mind blowing as the Matrix. I'm just like, oh, I love all these concepts. Um,
Yeah.
there's a couple others, but they're just weird because you've heard of speaking in tongues. Well, there's different types and they have names. Xenoglossy or xenolalia, speaking in a foreign language that's unknown to the speaker. And I've heard this before
Mhm.
where people are like visiting a different country about to be arrested and they're like, oh, don't arrest me, I'm blah 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 blah. And their traveling partner was like, how did you know Chinese or whatever? And they're like, I don't, I was
Yeah.
speaking in English. No, I was whatever. So it's like really cool. And then the other one is glossolalia, uttering sounds which aren't in any real language, where they're just kind of
Mhm.
babbling. And and I've seen that and kind of poo it myself. The Nazarene world denounces that outright, just like, oh, that's just don't even do that. But
Yeah. I've always thought it was funny. Like, I'm not saying that like I'm a big proponent of like speaking in tongues, and I was never part of um a denomination that did it, like a
uh-huh.
charismatic denomination.
Hmm.
But it says it. It's like it's all
Yeah,
over the Bible.
right.
Like it's speaking in tongues is like one of the earliest things that they talk about in Christianity is everybody's speaking in tongues. I don't know. I just like why I mean I get why people are uncomfortable with it, but I don't know. I don't know
Right,
why like they denounce it.
right.
So yeah.
Interesting stuff. I'm sure there's more that will catch my eye about these weird spiritual concepts and things that just like blow my mind. But right now, that's the list.
Yeah. Yeah, we made it through our whole thing.
Yeah.
2 hours. But yeah. Yeah, I'm
Well,
sure you'll edit it down. But yeah.
I'll try. It'll probably be an hour and a half, but thanks for talking,
Yeah.
bud. I appreciate it. I love these kind
Yeah,
of
thanks, Horace.
talks and stuff.
Yeah, me
All
too.
right.
It was good.
You have a you
Good
have
to
a good
talk to you.
Saturday, sir.